In his first major address to Vatican diplomats last week, Pope Leo XIV defended life at all stages. He especially demanded an end to abortion and surrogacy. The Holy Father says the Catholic Church categorically rejects any practice that denies or exploits the origins of life and its development, in particular, abortion.
In this regard, the Holy See expresses deep concern about projects aimed at financing cross-border mobility for the purpose of accessing the so-called right to safe abortion. It also considers it deplorable that public resources are allocated to suppress life rather than being invested to support mothers and families. The primary objective must remain the protection of every unborn child and the effective and concrete support of every woman so that she is able to welcome life.
Pope Leo also denounced the practice of surrogacy, saying it transformed gestation into a, quote, negotiable service.
This violates the dignity both of the child, who is reduced to a product, and of the mother, exploiting her body and the generative process and distorting the original relational calling of the family.
Another life issue the Holy Father addressed is caring for the elderly and sick. Pope Leo says the elderly and those battling illness are often isolated and can struggle to find a reason to continue living. This is an opportunity for us to guide our vulnerable communities to life-affirming resources.
Civil society and states also have a responsibility to respond concretely to situations of vulnerability, offering solutions to human suffering, such as palliative care, and promoting policies of authentic solidarity, rather than encouraging deceptive forms of compassion, such as euthanasia. A society is healthy and truly progresses only when it safeguards the sanctity of human life and works actively to promote it.
For more, we turn to our very own Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News, who joins us from Rome. Matthew, thank you so much for being with us.
Okay. Great to be with you.
Great. To start, what stood out the most to you about the Holy Father's address to diplomats?
Well, I think obviously every pope will be meeting with the diplomats. It's one of the great functions at the start of the year, bringing all the diplomats to the Holy See. Pope Leo is especially striking because two things. First, he demonstrated once again he is a true son of Augustine. He framed so much of the presentation sort of Augustinian themes. He referenced, for example, Augustine's great work on the city of God, contrasting it with the city of man. But he framed it using those Augustinian themes by looking at the idea of the human person, defending life from, as you noted earlier, from conception to natural death in all stages of life. But he nested that defense within the rights and dignity of the human person, made in the image and likeness of God, and then noted the importance of life and its defense, nesting that within the life of the family, which, as he described it, as the guardian of life. So we see classic Augustinian theology with Pope Leo, we see classic Catholic social teaching with Pope Leo, and then we also see sort of classic Christian or Catholic anthropology with Pope Leo. This was beautifully composed, and I think it's something that we're going to want to revisit again, certainly over this next year, until he talks to the diplomats again next year.
Matthew, is it unusual for a pope to spend so much time of his address to diplomats on life issues?
Yeah, well, all the popes, certainly the modern era, have addressed their concerns on the life issues. Pope Francis, for example, in one of the last major addresses of his pontificate in January of last year, talked about abortion to the diplomats who had gathered from around the world. So this is not necessarily anything new. What I think Pope Leo is very successful in this time around, though, was how he looks at the totality of life. This was a rather poignant pro-life message, again, from life in every stage. And I think this is something that the diplomats need to hear, and I think something that Pope Leo considered to be very important to impart.
Now, tell us more about the audience Pope Leo was addressing. Were there some people in that room who represent countries with a less than robust record on life?
Yes, and a short answer to that is very much so. There are countries that have diplomatic relations with the Holy See that everyone is fully aware of the fact that they have policies that are quite contrary to what the Church's vision and teachings are for life. That's particularly the case with many of the Western countries, North America included. So Pope Leo recognizes that this is a very diverse audience, but he also recognizes, as all popes do, that this is a universal message. Yes, it's going to diplomats who represent Western countries, but diplomats also represent Asia, Africa, the Central and South America, who have their own problems and challenges. And in this address, he touched on many of those issues. One other aspect that I think is worth noting is that there's a certain bluntness to the language. We saw that at times, of course, with Pope Francis. But one thing that Pope Leo did, he gave us a bit of a little bit of a tip when he first met with the diplomats back in May of last year, in his first major gathering with the diplomats, in which he said something that I think a lot of people didn't quite note at the time, but now we're seeing why he said it. He said to the diplomats that it is often that the task of the Church to speak bluntly, but to speak the truth bluntly, but with charity. With that warning, they should have anticipated that he was going to say something like he did to them this last week, where he spoke bluntly, but with charity. And then he warned that sometimes that can be greeted with misunderstanding, and it's the task of the Church to help people understand why the Church believes this, why this is important. And Pope Leo then folded and unfolded the Church's teachings as to why this is important and why they should be applied.
Amen. That's beautiful to see. What, if anything, do you hope will come from this address?
Well, I think Pope Leo is still getting to know a lot of the diplomats. We're anticipating some of his next major international trips to somewhere like Africa or South America. So I think in his interactions on a particular scale with the individual diplomats, he's able to impart the concerns of the Church, but also to offer the Church's vision for the human person, for the life of the family, defending the family. But then on the macro scale, on the global scale, he's talking to people all over the world, not just Catholics, but people of goodwill who are recognizing that there are serious social, cultural, political, and economic problems. And the Church has a vision for all of that. And I think Pope Leo wants to speak to them directly into their hearts.
Well, Matthew, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great to be with you.